This is the Impressions Xchange podcast.
Impressions Xchange podcast,
where all topics impacting the graphic imaging and printing industry are addressed via in-depth news coverage, analysis, and timely interviews inside the commercial, packaging, wide format, and in-plant communities.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of the Impressions Xchange podcast. I'm Cory Francer, Editor-in-Chief of Packaging Impressions, and your host for today's show. I'm really excited about today's guest, who shares a great story of how his company became a leader in the digital label and package printing space. Mark Turk, President and CEO of International Label and Printing Company, joined us from his HQ in Elk Grove Village, Illinois, which is just outside of Chicago. Mark walks us through his start in the printing industry on the newspaper side, and how he ended up becoming a leader in digital label production. But what's perhaps most interesting about the story of International Label is how it has evolved over time, taking on new capabilities to serve its customers with products beyond labels. Now, with digital wide format capabilities on board, International Label and Printing can tackle anything from signs to displays to corrugated, serving its customers in new and exciting ways. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for asking me, Cory.
Absolutely. So, Mark, just before we dive into today's topic, which, is going to be centered on International's leadership position in the digital space and how the company's really been early on the digital forefront. First, just wanted to ask, how is the company doing amidst the coronavirus situation? I'm sure it's been a pretty hectic time, but how are you doing? How is everyone at International doing? And how are you faring during this situation?
Well, we're happy to report that as unfortunate as this has been for so many, we're doing very well. We're knocking on wood and hoping that we can do all the right things to help our employees and our customers weather this. We were considered, I guess, a level 2 essential business because we have customers that are both in the food manufacturing and food retail business, grocery stores, bakeries, things of the like that depend on us for their essential needs. So by virtue of that, we've been allowed to by the government to stay open and keep running, and our employees are doing everything they can to follow all the do's and don'ts that have been published about minimizing the risk of this, washing our hands, of course, and minimizing contact groups and things like that. So we're pretty much in the same boat as a lot of people, but we feel very fortunate that we're in this industry that requires a lot of our services.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I've been hearing around the industry as well is, people are really in need right now of food products, pharmaceutical products, and these essential household elements that require labels and packaging in order to get into consumers' hands. So, that's good. I'm glad to hear that, everyone is doing well and that you've been able to stay up and running. Mark, we've known each other for a while now, and, we've done a few interviews in the past on International's really innovative uses of digital printing and the way that you've been able to serve your customers and expand your business through being on the cutting edge of this technology. But before we dive into that, I'd love to get your background specifically in the print industry. I know you started in the newspaper area before moving into labels. So you just walk me through a little bit, on your background and kind of how you worked your way through the print industry to end up taking over at International.
Well, I went to college to be a business major. I was going to major in business, and then Watergate kind of sprung up while I was there, and journalism became more of an attractive field. So I got into that, and the school newspaper and all that so many of us worked on in high school and college and things like that were still kind of inspiring, and maybe wanted to explore that as a career. And the folks that I was going to college with in the journalism program, I one thing I could do was I think I was a pretty good evaluator of talent, and I knew that I would probably get a job as a writer. But the writers that it's kind of like a ball team. You see the players that you're going to college with, and you're like, you know what? I got to be honest with myself here. These people are really, really good. And as it turned out, a lot of them to this day are Pulitzer Prize winners and work for the Washington Post and the Chicago Tribune. And I thought, I probably ought to maybe look at something else. And by accident, the school newspaper bought a printing press to print their own paper. And I took a graphics class and just kind of got hooked on the printing production part of it, and ended up in Chicago working for the Sun-Times in production. And by virtue of that, met my two current business partners, Bob Grzinski and Tony Dardano. Tony I had known in college as well. He was working on the advertising side. I was on the business and production side, and so we knew each other a little bit, but we all ended up at the Sun-Times together. I call it the water cooler story. We would be standing around. Bob was in finance, Tony was in advertising, I was in production, and we were in a lot of the same meetings together. And of course, after the meeting, you talk and wonder about what you're going to do with your future, because at that time the newspaper business was being corporatized, if you will. A lot of large companies were buying and selling newspapers, and nobody really knew what the future was going to hold. And it makes us look kind of smart now, but back then, 28 years ago, we weren't really thinking that far ahead that
Right.
something would happen this dramatically to that industry. So, but we had thought, well, why don't we pool our talents and see if we couldn't go into business together. We kind of have a pretty good trio of backgrounds covering different segments of business, and we decided to start looking for companies. We started out with looking at a dilapidated wallpaper factory, and that kind of fell through because the money they wanted and the money we had weren't really compatible. So and the key to all this too was an author that I had bought his book. It just came out in the late 80s called Swim with the Sharks Without Being Eaten Alive by Harvey Mackay, who's turned out to be one of my favorite authors of all time, and has written several best-selling business books. And I read his book. I attended a lecture that he had given in Chicago at McCormick Place, and I was hooked. I thought, you know what? So what did we end up doing? We ended up he bought a dilapidated envelope factory in Minnesota and turned it into as it turned out, we ended up buying a dilapidated, rundown label company that had been in business since 1929, and but had seen its rough times. And I didn't know anything about labels. I knew something about flexo printing because that was an alternative way to print newspapers back when I was at the Sun-Times, and so I did a lot of research on it for the company, and just kind of thought, well, this can be used for other things besides just labels. We can print all sorts of things flexo, and so that was sort of my tipping point, if you will. And this company became available, and we by the grace of God, it took us 18 months to make a deal, but we purchased it, and we've since. I didn't do as well as Harvey did, Cory. Don't get that impression. But we managed to survive all this time, and we've been we haven't killed each other yet in 27 years, and we're still moving forward. We've always been customer driven. There was already flexo in the shop. They were one of the first ones to really move forward with printing labels flexigraphically, and we just sort of took that and built on it. There was also offset, and there were 6 Mealy vertical letter presses in there when we bought it, and a couple of Kluges and a Ludlow lead typesetting machine. I mean, we had when there it was almost, wasn't quite timing, but we almost had where you walked into a time warp in our building where we had a Ludlow lead typesetting machine, and then you had across the room a digital press.
Oh, wow.
So we truly had the museum, if you will, of printing. But then, of course, we finally figured out a way to. Well, the government and the insurance people said lead was not a good thing to be working with in 1994. So we got rid of we supplanted that and replaced it. And so over time, we've matriculated equipment and technology and that sort of thing. And I assure you, anything that looks like we were, that I had any foresight was all accidental. We did things most of the time because they were customer driven or economically, advantageous for us. And so we had letterpress, offset, and flexo already. And around 2010, the Indigo came out, and of course years before that, but that we were kicking that around, and I just thought that I was too old to take on anything new like that. Maybe not in my lifetime. Digital was coming. We knew that. We just didn't think it was ready. Sure, you could do variable data and versioning and things like that, but other than the Indigo, which to me was just too far out of our price range, there really wasn't anything else that we saw that we could legitimately sell our customers to. It was digital and there was color on there, but gee, is it really going to be better than what we're doing now in terms of quality? I just didn't think we could sell it. And at the 2008 Label Expo in Rosemont here, we saw this Milpeter. It was kind of a prototype press at that time. It had flexo and a digital module in combination. And I just thought, that's it. That's what we need. I really got interested in this inline stuff because a lot of the label companies, and most of them, have inline flexo, where you print and you die cut and you finish and you do everything pretty much in line. Laminate, score, perforate, whatever. It's all done in line. And we thought that I really got acclimated and liked that philosophy. And when the Indigo came out, that was more of a two-stage thing. It had kind of the offset mentality where you have a press that prints, but always when that press prints, you have to do something with it. You have to fold it or cut it or do something. Something has to be done with it. It's really not, the product isn't really press delivered like the labels are. Yeah, you have to rewind them and do some finishing, but not nearly as much as you do with offset sheets. So we thought, this is it. This gives me an idea of a combination press, but it had been tried and it was taken off the market, and so we just sort of put it on the back burner. It's not ready for prime time, not in my lifetime, but if it ever comes out, it might be something worth looking at. Well, 2010, Milpeter came back to us. They knew I don't know, maybe they saw my expression in their booth. I don't know why they picked me, but because we were, we're certainly not a big company, and we had a Milpeter press in our shop, a flexo press that we had bought in 2005. So sure. I knew the company, I knew their background, and they're a solid company. Well, reputation-wise and everything else. So we looked at it. They asked me to go to Denmark and look at this thing again. They said, it's 2010. We think we've got a winner. We'd like to get your opinion. And I thought, well, okay, but look, we're not a independently wealthy company. We're watching our pennies. I'll look. If you're inviting me, I'll go. So we sent some files over to Denmark. We saw them print, and I was totally blown away that by just entering these files and clicking a number on it, like a copier, how many do you want of each one? These different images came out, and the quality was outstanding. It was called inkjet, and I thought, all right, all I saw was a box, that the web went through, and out came colorful labels that I had printed
Right.
here, Flexo. So I had no idea of the nuts and bolts technology of this stuff, and but I really liked what I saw. And of course, timing wise, we'd gotten some accounts that were craft beer, winery, and we had another account that sold textbooks, and they had asked us to do 64 versions of a 4x6 label, 1,000 each, and each one was a different copy. So it had a different 4-color image on it. And I just thought, well, something like this would be perfect for that. We did them. We made all those plates, and we mounted them, and we changed them, and we got that job off. But it took, quite some time. It took a couple of days to do it. And we got this, we did this job sometime later, and it took us a couple of hours, and so we just thought, wow, this is, so it was all customer driven, accidental. They made me an offer I couldn't refuse, and we bought the first one in North America in 2010. And
oh, wow.
Okay. Yeah, it was there. I mean, there was one they brought over, some years earlier that failed, and they took it out. But we had the very first one, and we were very pleased with it for what it could do. First quarter of 2011, it was operational, and it put us on the map. I mean, we really did some unique things with the things that we never thought about doing, packaging, roll-to-roll stuff that people, we didn't know what they did with it. They just asked us to print on it, and send them the finished roll. So there were a lot of different applications on this, and all of a sudden we became, well-versed in digital from the trial and error of working with them. And, obviously I heard all those cliches, you lead, you bleed, and, don't be the first guy to buy that car model and such. And, but, it did the job for us, and we learned a lot. And I think the others who worked on this thing learned a lot. The manufacturers, the OEMs, print head, we had print heads maybe at home on our home printer, but nothing of this magnitude, UV ink, and all the different things that go along with digital printing. So, and it was a combination press, so that we could, if we needed to print on clear, we could print Flexo white and then print 4 colors on top of that, and so we could do on foils and films and do all sorts of things. But as time went on, the run lengths got a little bit longer, and the press, even though for us it ran like 75 feet a minute, which to me was fine because of what the work we were doing was the small runs, the quick changes, and the variable data and whatever wasn't really a factor. But over time, two things happened: the run lengths, and then the Flexo units didn't really do a good job of talking to the digital unit, and vice versa. So as the run lengths got longer, the registration issues became more exposed, if you will, and it was more and more difficult to keep that thing lined up. So I was at Domino one day they're about 40 miles from us up in Gurnee.
Oh, sure, yeah.
We were looking for another customer to do something for variable data. They wanted some barcoding and some serialization done on their labels we were printing for them in black ink, and we were told that Domino had one of the leading machines to do this. So we went up there to look at that, and I happened to be sitting in their conference room, and I looked behind me. This was 2014. So I saw this machine, and I asked them, well, what's that? They said, well, that's our new Domino 4-color digital label press. And I said, oh my God. all you guys are getting into this game. You know, we had Screen, we had all these guys, Zycon, we had them all coming out with these roll-to-roll label printers, and now Domino had one. So they told me they were going to, this was their prototype model. It was on their floor for months, and they had a new one coming out. They were going to put it out to pasture, this one, and they were going to put it in crates and just put it in the storage room. I said, well, why don't everything would look really nice on my floor? I saw the white ink on this, Cory, and that's really what sold it. Was the white ink was phenomenal. It was almost like silk screen.
Oh wow!
And a rotary screen, as they call it. I call it silk screen because I'm old.
Sure.
But but this white ink was incredible. The registration was next to perfect, and I thought, wow, if I could get my hands on this thing, I could really not only save us some time, money, material because of the waste of having to go through labels that weren't in register. This thing could really help us. So I wasn't really in a market for any of this stuff. Honest to God, I just wanted to retire and go home. But these things just sort of kept, getting in front of my face. And we bought the machine from Domino. We ran a roll-to-roll machine for 3 years, and finished the rolls on our Milpeter press. Did the die cutting and finishing. So we had a press that could do that. And exactly what I didn't want to do, which was offline label printing, I ended up doing.
Right.
So then again, the run lengths got longer, and we're printing these labels. And all of a sudden, okay, there's 3 rolls of labels that are printed. Now I got to turn around and run them back through and die cut them. Oh my God, So it's like having to do the job over again. So I went back to Domino and I said, okay, maybe it's time for an upgrade. Do you have any demos that you want to sell me? And they said, not right yet, but we have, we're working now with OEMs. They were working with several, MCI, I'm saying their name wrong. And then a company called CEI that I had never heard of.
Yeah.
And they said, why don't we hook you up with them? They're interested in getting into this hybrid, they're calling it now. We called it combination printing back when we got started.
Yep.
And then there was a company called Hybrid, and they were very happy that people were using that word because it was free advertising for them, for their software company. So they hooked us up with Simon Gross at CEI, and he built us a press to our specifications. We told him what we wanted, and he built us what they call the transport system and the flexo part. Domino provided the engine to print, turned it into a 7-color, had the extended gamut, violet and orange, so we could produce more colors in the print spectrum. And in 2018, that thing became operational, and we've been running it since. And of course, again, with all these new machines, there were always bugs to work out. But the good thing about the Domino was that we had experience at inkjetting, and we kind of knew the nuances, the terminology, all the things that they felt they were going to have to teach us. We kind of knew because of our experience with Milpeter and the ill-fated Caslon, which is now, I think, the father of the Graphium that Fuji, I think, is distributing. But that's the Graphium is the Caslon is evolved into the Graphium. So
sure.
So that's kind of where the roll-to-roll and roll-to-hybrid and came about. And of course, around 2016, between 2015 and 16, we have a customer that we were doing signage for that we were pretty much doing offset and a little bit of flexo, but for certain geographic areas for them. And they came to us and said, well, we'd like you to do as many things as you can do so that our stores aren't, and our divisions aren't looking elsewhere to get all these other elements printed. We like them to order them from the same people so that they don't have to say, well, you got to buy it from this person, you got to buy this from that person. And we'd like to consolidate this as much as we can so that it's all coming from one source. Can you guys do this? And of course, we just said, sure. And then we went to figure out, all right, what is it they want us to do? And what do we have to buy to get this done? And we ended up buying a flatbed UV machine out of Korea called the Jetrix, which I had never heard of. I heard of the Swiss Q, that was sort of the Cadillac. But the Jetrix was a machine that we saw that was much more affordable, and the quality was, we thought, equally as good as anything out there. So we bought one, and then our banker said, well, you bought this, and they knew that we did this because we were sort of driven to by a customer, so they were okay with loaning us the money. And actually, with all these cases, the customers, our banker knew that we were doing this because we were customer driven, not because Mark Turk had this fabulous idea that digital was the answer.
Right.
We
Sure.
did this because, or I wanted to go digital. Far from it. I didn't want to let those guys in the door. I just thought this was something that wasn't going to happen in my lifetime, and we just didn't want to talk to any of them. And then
Wow.
it sort of became, now we're talking to all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we bought the Jetrix, could do a 4 foot by 8 foot sheet, any kind of substrate, virtually. And then our banker said, well, you're going to want one of those automatic cutters. I said, I don't think so. I think most of this stuff is going to be square cut. We could use it on a conventional guillotine type cutter, and I don't think we're going to have to go to that expense. Well, no sooner than I said that, than these orders came over for specially cut, die cut images and circles and, specialty shapes. And so I had to go back to them and said, guess what? We got to buy one of these cutters. So we went to the Zune people, and they sold us a cutter. And so now we're in the wide format business. And that has just grown to where we ran out of space, and we ended up leasing space across the street for more machines. And we ended up, because of the time crunch between when we get the art and when these companies need their signs is critical. I mean, they need them sometimes overnight. And how are you going to produce all these sheets? We ended up buying another Jetrix, and we got 2 of them, and we can maybe do, 16 sheets an hour, maybe, if we're lucky. But the sheet quantity became into the hundreds. So we were outsourcing a lot of work to people who had machines that were faster. And we saw one, as you probably know the story, at the SGIA show that Fuji had, called this X3 onset. And
Sure. Yeah.
We were just blown away with it. And we didn't really think we needed the X3. We would be okay with an X2. Well, we needed one like now. We needed it to save this account. We just didn't want to take the chance of someone else coming in there and being able to do it faster and cheaper and so on. So we bought the X3, made some room for it. This thing's a monster, and but it virtually put us into another dimension. And our business went from maybe 15 people to 30 in a matter of a few months, because of the pre-press. I didn't even mention that part. How incredibly critical the pre-press is for all this stuff now. How you prepare these files, and how all the variable data and the versioning, and how important the software and the personnel to do this has become. Probably half of our employees are a good half of them are pre-press people. I've hired at least 6 people who are traditionally graphic designers, and 2 of them are running the machines. But I've convinced them that learning that part is going to be essential to them going forward if they end up being graphic designers. how the technology, intertwines, and how important it is to know that if you're a designer, because in my mind, the creative and the design segment, if you will, of our industry is going to be leaned on more than ever going forward.
No, it's a great story, and yeah, really, yeah, great to learn a little bit more of the background of it. I mean, yeah, I mean, I've known International for a few years now, and yeah, there was a lot of those details I didn't know. So yeah, that was great to to learn some more of the background of how you guys have grown into the company that you are today. So just to kind of follow up though, one thing in particular that I thought was really interesting um, about International and how you've been able to grow the business and basically double it, like you mentioned, is by being open to exploring new segments and new products to really help provide customers with a full spectrum of printed products. So, when you went from being a primarily, label printing company into adding a pretty robust wide format element to the company, what were some of the key learning elements that you needed to do in order to make sure that got up and running? And was that did you find that to be a challenge, or was it something that you were able to adapt to quickly? Just yeah, how did you go about that process of going from a company really known for its labels into a company that can do several different things?
Well, we knew from outsourcing a little bit, Corey, from outsourcing a lot of this stuff. That's how we kind of started with just being able to fulfill our customers' requests to do this. And as we saw from going, I hate to use the word steal, because everybody knew that we were bringing this work to them, and that it might be temporary, because we knew eventually if we were going to be able to supply this in the time frame. You go to a customer who has a machine, and pretty much you're taking it over based on the demands of the client. And I knew that would not, we're not going to be able to walk into to an independent customer or vendor, if you will, I'm sorry, and say, look, we need these and we need them now, and we got to ship them tonight. Yeah, they're happy for the business, but they almost dread to see you, because they know you're going to ask for something and you're going to need it today, and we knew that, putting that kind of pressure on somebody is just not fair. I mean, I think they appreciate it, but you need the control. Eventually you need the control, and if you need to do something at 5 o'clock and you need to ship it to FedEx, we know all the ins and outs. We know we've delivered a lot of products to the airport to almost load the plane ourselves for FedEx.
Sure.
To get stuff out of here on time, and so we kind of know the time constraints and the production constraints that we're living under. So that's one of the things that drove it, and of course, knowing what machines they were using to do this. Maybe some of them we thought would work, some of them not so sure, and so some of them had these machines I was talking about, and the vendors were very helpful. I can't say enough about the friendships, not only the friendships, but the collaboration and the cooperation that they've given us to say, hey, look, we know, you're not a large company, and you don't have the finances to maybe buy all these, the top of the line or fastest and best stuff. So here's one we think will work on your budget. And we think it's, it's an up and coming company. And how would I know that? I wouldn't know unless all I was doing was researching the up and comings,
Right.
So they were very helpful in finding these people that were, to me, obscure because I had never heard of them, but I'm glad I heard of them, afterwards. So that's the other thing that helped us, were people who, didn't encourage us to not overbuy or not overspend, or buy something that was going to be outdated in just a matter of a year or two, that would need to have something upgradable or to survive. We'd get something that would work, that would be dependable, and we knew a little bit about inkjet, again, from the Domino and from the Caslon, so
Right.
that wasn't a total surprise to us. So those things were very helpful, and the space.
Right.
The space, we're almost like a lumberyard, where we got these 4x8 skids laying around all over, but you have to have space for the media.
Oh,
And
true.
we could no longer, store the stuff where we are and have the machines positioned where they are. The space that's a real consideration. You got to have the floor space for this stuff. Not only for the machines, but to get the media in and out of there and do it efficiently and not knock people over. So there were instances where we were walking, and we still do. We walk sideways a lot of times, but
Right.
but we've been able to figure out how to unload a semi, and those skids are big, and you need to buy handling equipment that can handle that. A long skid like that, you're things that you just didn't think about, forklifts and transportation equipment that has the longer forklift forks on there, and just little things like that. Where to store the ink, the waste. You still have waste. And I think with things like what you guys are doing, you'll help us with that down the road, because there's a lot of trim of styrene and these plastic and synthetic products that are going in a landfill, and it's just too bad, but there'll be a time where I hope that someone will come up with something that'll allow us to recycle some of that or all of it, and be able to, lessen the burden on that, because all these signs, especially if you're trimming them with bleeds, all that stuff just goes in the garbage. And that's probably the biggest, if you were to ask me the transition between doing what I was doing before and the label and packaging, there's a lot of waste. And I'm always open to anybody that has an idea with how to deal with that. I guess that challenge is never going to go away. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no, it's always great to catch up, and hopefully, when things get back to normal a little bit, we'll see you both at Label Expo and then again at Printing United.
Hope so, Cory. Thanks so much, Cory. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.